Hey, what's up, people? Another year, another set of videos, I suppose. And we're going to talk about the Acts of Pilate that's mentioned by Justin Martyr in the 150s, but it's probably not mentioned by Justin Martyr. It has quite an interesting history here. A few observations first of all. Obviously, Justin Martyr, right? He's writing in his first apology, 35. And this is what he says about the acts of Pontius Pilate. He mentions this just once. It's a small sentence, really, and that these things did happen, you can ascertain from the Acts of Pontius Pilate. He's talking about various prophecies and obviously the end of the life of Jesus. He mentions it and then just drops it completely. It would seem, though, that this might contain some really interesting things about Jesus. But we don't know anything about the Acts of Pilate until, of course, it comes along in the 4th century when Eusebius of Caesarea tells us this clearly proves that the recently published Acts of Pilate are forgeries, since they claim that the crime of the Saviour's death occurred in the 4th consulship of Tiberius, and at which time it is plain that Pilate was not yet ruling in Judea. So he's saying that the Acts of Pilate, this is the first reference other than Justin's reference that we get. And of course, he doesn't say anything about Justin having said this, because nobody says anything about Justin Martyr having said this. In fact, the first time that we really get any reference of Justin saying this is in the 1300s. I'm just going to read you a tiny passage of the book here. And that, this is the only mention. This mention has been used to help establish a more concrete claim to links with the historical Pilate, of course, but there are problems with this isolated and fleeting mention as well, not to mention the profusion of issues with the later forged document by the same name. So, the Acts of Pilate, you can read it today. It's a forgery. It's a 4th century forgery. It's stylistically just out of whack. It wasn't written in the 1st century, certainly not. Eusebius lists these acts as frauds, of course. They were written hundreds of years after Jesus, based on a broad and robust scholarly census here. As well, they're just a known forgery. Numbers of potential early readers would be Irenaeus, Tertullian, Origen, Clement of Alexandria, Jerome, Photius of Constantinople. This is in the 9th century. Eusebius and so on. So they never appears to have been quoted. These guys never appear to quote Justin saying this either. So we have that. Looks as though this is a forgery. Well, obviously, it's a forgery, but this entry in into Justin's actually looks like it's forged as well. So the Codex Parnasius Graecius 450 does contain this line, but this text is confidently dated, to the 1364. So this is the first time we see Justin really saying this, and it's in the kind of late Middle Ages, really. So it's perfectly conceivable that it was entered into the text as part of a wider effort to pad out existing materials for propaganda purposes, in that time. There are also a few red flags associated with this sudden change in tone and flow from talking about Jesus' prophecies to using the word acta, a word uncommon in Justin's vocabulary. It's more legal records and legal matters that this word would be used in anyway. The fact that one would assume it would be a pivotal piece of early evidence, but is mentioned only in passing and never again, and that it broadly represents a rhetorical mode associated with fraudulent material, only coming to light in the 4th century, further complicates the argument of this brief verse's authenticity. So, I'm not going to go on. 5 minutes. Let's keep it at 5 minutes. The Acts of Pilate is a forgery. this reference to Justin as well. Saying this is probably a forgery or fraudulent entry, a little interpolation into a text that only appears in the Middle Ages. So I'll just leave that there, and it's very likely that we would hear a lot about this text from multiple church fathers, of course, if it indeed existed, because it's really important to link Pontius Pilate to Jesus Christ, of course. Anyway, yeah, so we'll leave that there. And remember Tacitus and Josephus mention Pilate, but they don't mention Pilate, and we will talk about that later in some videos, hopefully, to be released in the next month, hopefully a month. I'm going to start putting these videos out a hell of a lot. So enjoy, have a nice night, cheers, bye, 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 bye.